Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know those days when you're just daydreaming about winning the lottery?
Yeah.
Like, what would you even do with all that money?
Yeah, I think we all have those fantasies.
Well, today we're diving into the world where those fantasies are reality, the world of billionaires. Forbes just released its real-time billionaires list, and let's just say there is a lot to unpack.
Definitely a lot to unpack. It's really fascinating to see how global wealth is shifting and changing, especially in light of all the, all the global unrest we've seen this past year.
Exactly. So we're taking a look at the Forbes list itself, and there's been some great expert analysis written about the list that we can use to kind of break it all down.
Right.
But before we get too far, I think the big question we need to answer is what's actually driving this billionaire boom?
That's a big question, for sure, and an important one.
And is it good news, bad news,
Mm-hmm.
or is it more complicated than that?
It's likely more complicated than that, almost certainly. But it's definitely something worth taking a closer look at.
Definitely. So to start, let's talk about the sheer scale of this whole thing. There are now 2,781 billionaires globally.
Wow.
Which is 141 more than last year.
141 more.
Yeah. And their combined wealth, a staggering $14.2 trillion.
So that's not just an increase, that's shattering all previous records. I mean, despite, we've had a year of some pretty serious global issues, right? Like we haven't seen in decades.
You think the war and inflation would kind of, put a damper on things, maybe shrink those portfolios a bit. But it seems like it's done the opposite.
Yeah, the opposite seems to be happening. 2/3 of these billionaires actually got richer this year.
Wow.
Only a quarter of them saw their fortunes decline. And the top 20, they added a combined $700 billion.
Billion with a B. It's kind of obscene, isn't it? Like, is there even anything to spend that much money on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it raises some serious ethical questions about wealth inequality. But from a purely economic standpoint, I think it suggests that, the systems in place are disproportionately rewarding those who are already at the very top.
Makes you wonder, right? Like, is there a ceiling to this kind of wealth accumulation? Or can it just keep going up and up forever?
Right.
So let's get into the where of it all. Where are these massive fortunes being made? I don't think this will come as a surprise to anyone, but the U.S. is still on top.
Yeah, not surprising.
Record 813 billionaires holding a combined $5.7 trillion. China comes in second, but it's a distant second. 473 billionaires and $1.7 trillion.
Yeah. Interesting. That gap is significant. I mean, even with all of China's economic strength, they're not keeping pace with the U.S. when it comes to creating new billionaires.
Right.
And then you've got India, who's making a strong showing this year. They've got a record 200 billion.
This location clearly matters.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway here for the average person, who's not trying to become a billionaire, but wants to understand how this global money flow works?
Well, I think it tells you that national economic conditions are extremely important. Government policies, too. Even cultural attitudes towards wealth creation can play a role. The U.S., with its strong tech sector and the venture capital ecosystem there, it's like a breeding ground for creating new wealth.
Right.
India's booming tech and pharmaceutical industries are also contributing to their rise in billionaires.
So is there some kind of secret sauce? Like, what are the common threads between these different countries and these different people that can maybe explain this boom?
Well, it's a complex question.
Of course it is.
But there are some key factors at play. Obviously, global stock markets are a big one.
Right.
Many of these billionaires have large stakes in publicly traded companies. Then you have to look at specific industries that are doing really well. Tech, pharma, luxury goods. Those industries are experiencing massive growth, and that's going to lift the fortunes of the people at the top.
So it's not even just about having some brilliant idea. You have to be in the right place at the right time in the right industry with the right connections.
You got it. And on top of that, we can't forget the role of technology. I mean, it's literally creating entirely new industries and opportunities for wealth creation that didn't even exist a decade ago.
It's crazy how fast things are changing.
Right. The speed of innovation is just mind-boggling, and that's translating into rapid wealth accumulation for those who are in a position to capitalize on it.
Okay, so it's clear that it's been a banner year for the super rich, but is it sustainable? Is this billionaire boom going to last?
That's the trillion-dollar question, maybe even multi-trillion-dollar question. I don't think anyone can predict the future for sure, but it is worth considering if these factors driving this growth will continue indefinitely.
Yeah, I mean, what goes up must come down, right?
Well, we'll see. But it's worth noting that rising interest rates, geopolitical risks, increasing calls for wealth redistribution, those are all potential headwinds that could slow things down.
So maybe it's not all champagne and caviar on those mega yachts. Sounds like there's a little uncertainty mixed in with the celebration.
Exactly. And I think it all leads back to a really important question. As the wealth gap widens, what does that mean for society as a whole? And what role, if any, do we each have in shaping a future where prosperity is more evenly distributed?
Yeah, definitely something to think about. And probably worth another deep dive. But for now, we've crunched the numbers, we've looked at the trends, and we've talked about the potential problems on the horizon. The billionaire boom is real, it's complicated, and it's definitely something we all need to keep an eye on.